Okay, I think I'd like to start. I understand you've written a book called
Yes.
The Anti-Teachings.
Yes.
Maybe you can outline a little bit the...
Yes. The title, yeah, I don't know, where does the title come from? It's always hard to talk about the book because I almost forgot about it, but so I have to kind of, get into it before I can tell you anything about it. So let me see. So the title, The Anti-Teachings, is that I say that what is living right now, you can't understand. So anything we do to try to understand it is it's not it.
No.
That's so, and anything we do to try to understand it, we think we can understand it by thinking, by words, by thinking. And it can't be understood by thinking, and it can't be understood by any other faculty. So it will always be the unknown. What's here right now, I know the concept. You're sitting there, I'm sitting here, there's a camera there. Whatever, a wall, car, trees. I know all the concepts, but it's just concepts. It's just something that we have acquired. It's something that we have been told. And we think that's real. We think Caleb is really sitting there and Martin is really sitting here. And it's just a faculty of separating life into entities. But life is an unbroken whole. There isn't any entities here, except for the entities that we think are there. But that doesn't make them real. So anything we do to try to learn about what's real, learn about what's true, it's not it. It can never be it. Because what's true and what's real we'll never know. Mm-hmm. And even when you realize that you can never know it, you won't know it. That won't make you know it. Then there's just the unknown, but you don't have a problem with not knowing it.
Okay.
Because why would you want to know it? This is why would you even think about knowing what's living right now? It's just because as the entity we think we are, a separate me, a separate Caleb, we feel there's something wrong. So we want to try to understand what's real, because this doesn't seem real and I've been told it's not real. So I want to understand what's real because then I can feel better.
Yeah.
So it's understandable that I've been pursuing that for 30 years myself. I was on the spiritual path for 30 years and I've been into all different kind of stuff.
Okay.
10 years in a New Age cult where, I've been, doing all different kind of meditation methods, and I've been reading everything from like shamanism to Ramana Maharshi to, you name it, and I've more or less been there. There's a few places I haven't been, but I've been a lot in the whole religious, spiritual supermarket, trying to find the meaning, trying to find out what's real, trying to give myself, some peace, some more safety, because a separate me will never find peace, will never find safety.
No.
It's because it's not real, and because I think I am separate, the world seems threatening.
Yeah.
So no matter how peaceful I feel within myself, or how much, I manage to create some kind of dull state in myself, or whatever, peaceful state I would call it, there's always a security underneath, because I'm not in control of that over there. I'm not in control of the world around me. And it's just a conceptual world and a conceptual me and I'm relating to life in that way all the time. And I'm acting that out. So I'm acting as if there's another person there, So what I say in the book also part of, now I remember more as we speak about, in the beginning I say the problem isn't that we're destroying the planet right now. And the problem isn't, that I feel insecure, stressed out, frightened, sad, or whatever I might have of so-called negative feelings. The problem that creates all that is a belief in separation. It's a belief in the whole separative worldview.
Yeah.
So I say that's a problem. And that worldview, what I say, which might not agree with some of the people where you come from, but I think they probably, in terms of like Tony Parsons or Jim Newman or something like that, because I say that comes, the separation is created, I don't say by thinking, but I say by the thinking ability. And I make a distinction in between thinking and the thinking ability. So I say that the thinking ability is a very healthy, a very good ability that I think all species have. But that we have a little more developed because we have a bigger brain. So the thinking ability is an imaginative. It's an imaginative ability to imagine life as separate, as being separate.
Right.
So it's very good but it's just an imagination. So I can imagine there's a separate entity there and a separate entity here, and that's soft, and this is hard. So it helps me to navigate in life.
Yeah.
So and it helps me to communicate to you right now. But it's the ability to imagine separation and to give those imagined entities different qualities.
Yeah.
So that's a man, that's a table.
Right. Yeah.
And there's a difference in how I relate to that. So it's very healthy for the living organism to have that ability. But it's just an ability like seeing, hearing, smelling. It's all to support the living organism to thrive, survive, and procreate.
Right.
It can't say anything about reality, and that's where we go wrong. We think that these separate entities are actually starting with myself. It's actually real, but it's not real.
Yeah.
And then we live as if they're real. So in many spiritual traditions, and which I distance myself from totally, but sometimes they say things that I also say myself. So they say that thought, and I would say the thinking ability, because I think thinking is actually, what we call thoughts and words, what we sit and say now, is actually a superstructure that comes later as further development of the thinking ability.
Okay.
We put sound to it.
Right.
But we would even perceive something else before we have a sound or word for it. So it's not thinking, but it's the thinking ability to imagine this separative thing and to give them different qualities. That's what the thinking ability is.
Right.
And I was going somewhere with that I forgot now.
Yeah. But I'm curious, this idea of separation, this
Right.
thinking ability creates this idea
Right.
of separation.
Right.
But is there a way then to stop that belief? I mean, it's entrenched
So
in
why
us.
would you want to stop it?
Because the feeling of separation creates this discomfort somehow.
Yeah.
And this fear of the other.
Right. So you think that you feel good if you get rid of that.
There's an idea here.
That's idea. That's what we've been told.
Yeah, for sure.
So we're told by all the religious spiritual traditions something along those lines.
Exactly.
Christianity doesn't phrase it that way, but you can interpret a lot of what Christianity says to be in accordance with that also.
Yeah.
So the one wanting to get rid of it, me, you, wanting to kind of, so what I was about to say is that from the spiritual religious traditions, they say that thinking should not be our master, but our servant.
Yeah.
So I would say the thinking ability, this ability to imagine separation and to give different qualities to the different entities we imagine, that should not be the master, but it should be the servant. And that's what I say, that's how it was originally for man. I can't prove that,
No.
but I'm pretty sure it was originally before. I have some ideas about why that changed, so at a certain time in human evolution, tens of thousands of years ago, I would think, this thinking ability became our master.
Right.
And I think it happened at a certain time where we were under pressure. We went through, nature was, we were threatened. The survival of the species, of the human species, were threatened. We were down on maybe, some say like less than 30,000 individuals, some say even a few thousand, a few hundred or some time.
Yeah.
And what generally happens to a species when they're under that kind of pressure is that they try new strategies. The old strategy is not working, we're getting fewer and fewer. So it's a species intelligence. It's not something that they say one day two humans will talk. Shouldn't we try something else? It's something that kind of, it's actually an intelligence within the species as such. Then you develop a new arm, or you develop something else, a new ability. So I think that when we were under pressure, maybe 70, 100,000 years ago, they talk about that there was a very severe climate changes and ice age, I think, or something like that. And then the species, I think, have tried out a new strategy, maybe at that time, maybe later, maybe before. I don't know anything about that. But I imagine it would be under a pressure situation like that, when we went through a population bottleneck, where we were very few people left. We were dying out. So we said, okay, we've got to try something else to live. And then we said, why don't we try, because we've developed a big brain, so instead of just using it as our servant, why don't we try, we need to be more aggressive to survive. So it seems like the thinking ability has aggressive potentials. So if we let that rule, be the master of our body, which at the same time it needs to, at the same time as you give it control over the body, it's the one defining our reality. It goes together. So we give it the mastery over the body, at the same time it defines reality, because to rule the body it must believe in the reality that it perceives. And it works. We become a very, we survive, we thrive, we become a very aggressive species. We've always been an aggressive species, at least since then, very aggressive. And just feeling that the rest of the world is at our service.
Right.
We can do what we want with nature and the other animals, because we have many stories from all different kinds of religions and spiritual traditions saying we're the highest evolved species. We're the ones with the biggest consciousness. Actually, the world, some traditions and even the Christian traditions can be interpreted at least that way, that we are here to rule over the world. So we use it, we give the thinking ability control over our actions. It works, or it becomes at the same time our reality. And then it goes from maybe 5, 10, 30,000 individuals to almost 8 billion now.
Right.
So it's been extremely effective. So it's become, it's actually not wrong or a mistake or anything. I think it's an evolutionary,
development. Do you think it's more like an evolutionary process rather than a conscious decision to give mastery?
Well, you don't know how those kind of things happen. Nobody knows. Huh? So I have no idea. But you see species, so you see the human species, this happens to us. You see other species, they develop new powers, new abilities throughout their evolution, and especially when they're under pressure. You need to do something, or you die out. So you die out as a species. Huh? So 98% of the species that has been on this planet, something like that. I don't remember exactly, but the vast majority have died out. They're not here any longer.
No.
So we are still here so far. But then sometimes what happens is that what was your strength, which you could say that this whole, you buy into what I'm saying here, that the thinking ability, and I don't even know if I buy into it myself, it's just a theory.
For sure.
So let's say that the thinking ability kind of got control over us, and has done that until today. So it's become it's our, even in Danish, when you say Homo sapiens, in Danish, we translate that into the thinking man.
Okay,
So it's actually the kind of, that's the way we define ourselves as compared to other species, and as compared to previous, our ancestors. We didn't, they were called a different thing, but Homo sapiens is a thinking man. And it's translated a little different into English, which I don't remember, So that is our strength. That's how we thrive and survive and now dominate the whole planet, But that strength has now become our weakness. So now because we're destroying the habitat that is sustaining ourselves, we're not only destroying all the other species, but without that we can't survive. So whether you believe in global warming or not, but just look at pollution. You know, how we've destroyed it. Just look at how we're taking species out of a whole ecosystem, and there's so many things that just are on the verge of collapsing and are collapsing.
Yeah.
You know, so what was our strength? And there's actually a word for that in evolutionary science. They call it an evolutionary trap.
Right.
You know, so what was once your strength, you know, which helped you thrive and survive, and it's, you know, you look at our world, that strength has shaped the way we're living in the world.
Yeah.
You know, concrete, cars, everything, you know.
Yeah.
You know, so that has helped us develop a lot of things, technology and everything, you know. So you say, can we let go of it? And what I say is that I think it's very unlikely. You know, because you see it with other species. You know, sea turtles, baby sea turtles, once they're hatched from the sand. I don't know if you've seen it. It's been in television quite a bit. You know, I saw it at least once. And you see that today they live where man are.
Yeah.
So they navigate by the light from the sea. So that's how they find out. And instead now they're getting confused by the man-made lights. Yeah. And they enter up to the gardens or to the highway, and they get killed of exhaustion or by cars or by something else. Yeah. So that's their evolutionary trap. Their strength was to navigate by the light from the sea, right. But their strength is now killing them. Yeah. So what I say is that our strength is now killing us, which is the thinking ability being our master instead of our servant, which it was originally. Yeah. So and all our understanding, you know, so you could say that's an understanding we're developing here together. You're listening to my kind of interpretation of it, yeah. Which I say I don't know if it is that way. To me it's a plausible explanation. Yeah. But understanding that doesn't mean anything, you know, because the one understanding it is a product of that, me. You know, so the separate me is kind of, I understand that, I should let go of it. But myself is a product of the thinking, so I'm not real.
No, okay. Yeah.
You know, so the one thinking I can understand and let go of it is just more thoughts.
Yes.
So even if this was perfectly true, which is the whole theory I outlined here, yeah. Even if it was perfectly true, which is very unlikely, but let's say it's perfectly true, my logical, you know, laying out of this here now, you know, and we understand it, we're not going to let go of it, because the one trying to let go of it, or wanting to let go of it, is not interested in letting go of it. You know, you say you're interested, because, but what you're interested in, and what I'm interested in, when anybody says that they're interested in letting go of whatever, separation, their ego, whatever we call it in spiritual and non-traditional, non-spiritual terms, they're just interested in what they think they can get out of it, which is what I hear from religion, and you know, so nobody can be interested, one, in their own death, two, in the unknown, because what you meet, when and if that should collapse, is the unknown. Yeah. But you want to know the unknown, because you heard that when I know the unknown, then it feels good, you know. But how can you be interested in something you don't know about? What we're interested in, when I say I want to kill my ego, which I did myself for 30 years, you know, so I'm definitely guilty. Yeah. Everybody, it's the same for everybody. Sure. Yeah. I was interested in what I thought I could get out of it. Satchitananda.
Satchitananda, exactly. Yeah. It's an ideal of peace and bliss.
Eternal joy. Yeah. You know, who doesn't want that? Yeah. You know, so of course I want that, but I don't, you know, but that's because I think what it is, but it's the unknown. And I've never been, you know, so what I say in the beginning of the book is that I talk about that in 2017, I realized that for myself, you know, I said, I've never been interested. You know, and the goal I think I'm looking for actually doesn't exist. Right. You know, so the goal of this, whatever it is for me, just another thing than what's here right now, you know, even if it's just a little more joy, or a little more this, or a little more that, or it's eternal joy and bliss, it doesn't exist. You know, so I've been chasing for 30 years, I've been chasing something, suddenly I go something, it doesn't exist. You know, and then I walked on, and I'd had like 3 or 4 weeks before that, where I gradually had realized what we just talked about, that I'd never been interested. You know, so I've been meditating like crazy for 20 years, sometimes weeks and months at a time, and I've been reading all different kinds of spiritual scriptures, and I've been leading a New Age cult here in Denmark together with somebody else. I've been doing, my whole life I've been about that for at least 15, 20 years, the absolute priority, and for 30 years, my main interest. Yeah. And suddenly I was like, in a few weeks, I was like, I've never been interested. I'm just interested in feeling better for myself. I'm interested in what I think I can get out of it, but I'm not interested in my own death. And everything I do to achieve that is a lie. I lie to myself and I lie to you. I lie to my whole surroundings. And my life is a spiritual life, and I want my ego to die. It's been a lie all along. Okay. I was kind of confronted with that, but in a way that wasn't like, oh my God, I'm a bloody liar, I've been lying. It was just like, okay, so I'm a liar, and then I could talk to people about it and say it and so on, and then one day I realized that, but I was still like, what is enlightenment? What is this liberation from separation from the ego? And then one day I was out wanting to say, oh, it's not there. It's just ideas about what I heard it was.
Okay, yeah.
There isn't actually any enlightenment.
Yeah. There
isn't any moksha, there isn't any nirvana, there isn't any spiritual freedom, there isn't any eternal peace, bliss. There isn't anything, even all the psychological goals you go for. It's not there, because what's there is what's here. Yeah. So this is what's living. Whether I feel fear, anger, sadness, depression, whatever negative feelings I feel now, that's it. And whether I feel joyful, energized, totally wasted and tired, headache, whether I'm full of cancer, that's what's living.
Yeah. So the seeking stopped for you then somehow? There was suddenly the end of seeking.
Then I couldn't go back, and I had gradually, as I said, like the last 3 or 4 weeks I started, I can't take my, I had a lot of practice, so I couldn't take my practice seriously because I knew it's fake. I don't really want. And so everybody, after that, I've been studying a lot of different, as I said, spiritual scriptures and traditions and a little philosophy, but mostly within the spiritual field, in all different kinds of traditions, especially the Eastern. So I couldn't, that didn't interest me because what they say they can help me to get, I'm not interested in. And nobody can be interested, I then claim nobody can be interested in it, but that's, if you say you're interested in it, I say, okay, I don't believe you, but I don't have a problem with you saying it. But you can't be interested in your own death really, and you can't be interested in the unknown. You can be interested in what you think you will achieve from it, which sounds great, and that's what I was chasing, So I don't blame anybody for that, and I'm just saying how I see it, and I don't want people to agree with me. I'm just laying out what I see, and that's what I'm doing in the book, more or less, along some of these lines.
Yeah. But then there's nothing we can do then to stop seeking somehow, unless it happens.
All doing is taking you in the opposite direction. All doing is adding to the identification with the thinking abilities, separate worldview, and it's just adding more on top of that. And that might, I often when I discuss it with people say, but I feel more peaceful from my meditation. I feel more. They say, well, if it works and you like it, I'm not trying to stop you. I'm just saying that in terms of realizing it, I wouldn't even say what's real, because I don't know what's real. No. But in terms of realizing that you're not this separate entity that you thought, and that you don't know who you are in terms of real, and you don't know what reality. So if in terms of realizing that, none of that stuff is going to help you. It's going to do. It's going to perpetuate the world you're living in right now. That whole separate worldview. It's just going to continue that momentum.
Yeah.
So until you stop all that, which you can't do, because that will be more doing. Exactly. That's kind of, so you can't. So I stop. Then that's a strategy that then somebody uses. Say, okay, I don't go and see any spiritual teachers. I don't do any practice. I don't do anything because I see this. So I'm just gonna go along. I'm not gonna think of any of this, and I'm just But then that's a doing.
Yeah.
That's just as much a doing as a spiritual practice.
Exactly.
So that's a kind of hopeless message in this.
Yeah.
But I would say it sounds hopeless to the separate I because I want to do something. You know, the separate I that I believe I am, which is a thought construct, which is not real. It survives on going somewhere. So it's always reaching out, because if it's not reaching out, if it's just not content, but if it's just with what's here now, which it can't be, then it would collapse. It exists in duality, duality in terms of a separate worldview, but also duality in terms of I need to get somewhere else than where I am now.
Yeah.
You know, but actually, so it might sound it will sound like just stopping, and I can't do anything to stop. So you totally feel trapped in a way, if you believe in what I'm saying, you know, so, which I don't ask anybody to do. But let's say that I'm right, you know, just for the argument. But I would still then argue that this is the most positive message, because then you can live now,
right?
You know, you don't have to wait for anything. Then this is it, and you can live now, and you can go. And there's nothing you can do to achieve this, which might never happen to you or to somebody. You know, it might never happen. But then. What drives you? So you're a musician, you know, so you go and play your music, enjoy. If that's what's pulling you, and then why not do it?
Yeah.
You know, then and you don't need to have a bad conscience, which I lived with for all my spiritual search for 25, 30 years. You know, it was always like there's somewhere else, there's something else, and it felt great to a certain extent because there was a meaning and purposefulness to my life for searching for this. There was a lot of feeling more developed than most of the rest of people, so I felt superior, and it feels great. The separate I feels great when it's superior. I found this, that a very little percentage, maybe not even 1% of humanity have found this, and I'm going for it, and they just can't see it, but I've seen it.
Yeah.
So I'm doing this, you know, so it feels great to the separate I. It feels great to be superior, but it's still just perpetuating it.
Yeah. Yeah. And this concept of I,
right?
Because a lot of these teachings talk about the I am as a impersonal I,
right?
But that's just that's just another concept, another idea.
Yeah. So I know there's a lot of traditions, especially Eastern, that talks about I am.
Yeah.
You know, so the whole I was into some of those guys also, some very famous. I don't need to name names necessarily, you know, but I said that once it's seen that this I is constructed, there's not a deeper I,
right?
A bigger I, a self with a big S.
No.
There's simply no self.
Right.
There's simply no I, and nothing takes its place. So that's what we hope for. I said, when I let go of my ego, I get into my real self. And I said, no, you get into no self.
Yeah.
But you don't get into no self.
Yeah.
The you just collapses, and there's nothing you get out of it.
Right.
Because there's no you left.
Yeah.
You know, so what will happen is that a lot of your needs will fall away, because they're based on the idea of separation.
Yeah.
So we always need to kind of, you know, because underneath this separate I, there's this insecurity that we try to cover up somehow.
Yeah.
By searching for something else, you know. So if we just stop, you know, we will have to be faced with that insecurity. So we seek entertainment, we seek new girlfriends, we seek a better career, we seek more simple way of living, more rich way of living. You know, we seek all different kind of things. We seek to be more green, more vegan, more climate friendly, or the opposite. You know, so it doesn't matter whether it's one or the other. In relationship to this, it doesn't matter.
No.
In relationship to the world, you know, that might matter, but I'm not talking about that.
No.
You know, so in relationship to this, it's all just strategies to keep away the depression that is actually at the core of this separate entity, non-existing separate entity construct. There's a depression construct that is. It's because it's always fear and desire, as they say in Buddhism.
Yeah.
You know, I want more of this. I don't want that, you know. So you're always navigating by fear of desire and desire, you know. So and so there's always this insecurity / depression / fear, you know, that is there underneath, you know. And we use all different kinds of strategies to try to get away from it, to try to dull it, to try to do all different kind of stuff, and that can be meditation, psychotherapy, philosophical studies, political studies, political engagement, all different kind of things. Whatever, being closer to nature, being further away from nature or something. It doesn't really matter, but so we use all this to kind of stay away, to kind of protect ourselves, and to not be confronted with who we really, what's really going on here.
Right. Yeah.
And it's actually not dangerous not to do that, because if you stop doing that, you will be confronted with what the separatized nature is, but if you really see it, it doesn't want to be seen.
No.
That's its survival strategy, which is not, it's not an entity that is against you. It's just a thinking ability it's control over, and a thinking ability, since it got control over us, it started to believe its own reality was real, as we talked about, so the whole world of separation. So the thinking ability's core task within all living beings, humans and other living beings, is to help that living organisms thrive and survive.
Yeah.
So once it starts to believe that this is a separate entity, its core task is still to help it thrive and survive, but now it's an unreal entity. It has to help to thrive and survive.
Yeah.
And the only way it can do that is to keep this separate entity alive is by constantly insisting that it's real.
Right. Yeah.
So it's a program. It's like all our other senses. It's just something that is programmed into us, developed over during the evolution. But it can't. Once it gets, for whatever reason, it gets a control over the living organism. It can't help but doing that. It's part of its programming to help this survive.
Yeah.
But before it got control, it wouldn't need to be active all the time. It was just, it would be another intelligence that was pulling on the thinking ability, pulling of the visual ability, pulling on the hearing, seeing, and so on, whenever it was needed to navigate and to survive and maybe to procreate, but once it gets in control, it has to be active all the time and insist on this separate I being. It's an enormous strain on the living organism.
Yeah.
So I think that's why a lot of the illnesses we're seeing now, more and more, like Alzheimer's and maybe what do we call it when you can't remember? Now I can't remember what it means. So maybe I'm getting
That's
it.
Alzheimer's.
That's Alzheimer's. Okay. And other
dementia.
Dementia. Yeah, it's more dementia. I mean. Yeah. So maybe it's happening to me now. Huh? But it's because the brain is constantly working. You constantly have to think this, and you constantly have to relate to the rest of the world.
Yeah.
So you all the time have to keep this worldview in place, and it's not real. And you navigate, so you make the body not only is the brain on overwork, but also we do a lot of activities with the body that the body is not interested in.
Yeah.
Because we chase all different kind of things, so it's a constant strain on the whole living organism.
Yeah, I've heard it takes a lot of energy to be a somebody.
Right, and you tense up.
Yeah.
So it's kind of because there is this underneath, there is this fear all the time. So it's, and there is this, so you generate a kind of a shell almost around you of this separation.
Yeah.
So and it uses your senses and uses everything in unnatural ways.
Yeah.
Which might have been good, as I said, at a time of where the species needed to survive, but we don't need it anymore. Now it's the opposite. Now it's our evolutionary threat.
Right.
So whether we can do anything, just to get back to that, we can't. But I think it can stop.
Yeah.
So it can fall into its natural. It's natural that it's actually being in control now. So I don't like natural place, but it can fall into the place it was before this happened.
Right.
But this is totally natural. The whole separation, the whole killing of the world that we're doing right now with pollution and stuff like that. The dinosaurs were very destructive. They didn't have the thinking ability, as far as we know, in control of them, but they were very destructive species.
Yeah.
You know, so it's nothing wrong with us being destructive. There's nothing unnatural. It's totally natural.
Yeah.
And it might be our evolutionary trap, and we might be on a self-destruction, you know, path right now, and we might die out. I think that's the most likely to happen.
Yeah.
And you never know. So the whole thinking abilities, the control over us could collapse, you know, as a species, as it happened as a species once.
Yeah.
But I think it's very unlikely.
Yeah.
You know, I don't see any sign. We just sophisticated more and more and more.
Yeah.
And then some say that it's, you know, the darkest hour is just before dusk. Huh?
Right.
So that I don't know.
Yeah.
You know, it doesn't look like it.
No. But it does seem that.
And I have no preferences. You know, it's natural what's developing anyway. We talked about before the interview that I worked with Cradle to Cradle some years ago. You know, so there isn't really any death. You know, that's part of what Cradle to Cradle says. You know, this design, environmental concept of how, you know, everything works. So as soon as this goes through what we call clinical death, you know, it all different kind of organism feeds on it. And it goes into a natural cycle. It's just life unfolding, and it will say, "Oh, Martin is gone, or you'll be happy, or sad, or whatever," you know. But he's not gone because he was never there.
Right.
It's just this living thing now it collapses more radically than what it's doing right now. You know? But even right now, you know, some of my atoms have moved into yours. We've been speaking, and some of yours into mine.
Yeah.
So 98% of these atoms were not here a year ago. Right. So this is actually not who I was a year ago.
Yeah.
You know, but I insist that there's an I in here all the time, but it's not even scientifically, physically correct to say that.
No.
So then we say a soul, and we develop all different kinds of things to kind of explain it. What soul? Mm-hmm. No, it's just life unfolding. Nothing ever dies. What's the problem? Why do you? So that's reincarnation taken to its fullest extent.
Yeah.
That's saying nothing ever dies. So it's just reincarnating, you know. So when this dies, it goes into the trees, to the soil, to all different kinds of stuff. Maybe some of the atoms goes in. They say that as you know, we actually both have an atom of both Jesus and Buddha in us.
Okay.
You know, so it's not gone who they physically were. You know, it's still here.
Yeah, yeah. But even to understand this message and it feels like it resonates somehow. Right. This message.
Yeah.
And to bring awareness to this idea of that. Yeah, but if it doesn't, it can't.
If it resonates with you, you probably can't keep away from it. You know, so that's no problem. But I just say that however much you understand of it is not going to help you
at all. Yeah.
But you can still say that you know, if that resonates with you, if that interests you, that's probably the people you want to hang out with to a certain extent.
Yeah.
And that it is for me too. I also have friends that are not interested in this at all, and I don't even talk with them about it. You know, so it's and I don't have any preference whether I have a talk about this now where you resonate with it and we can really go into it, or whether I'm with a friend who doesn't understand a bit and is not interested. I would never impose it on them. I don't want to, you know. So I've written a book, but it's mostly because I've been pushed by a friend, you know, that kept on insisting I should write this book, and that I had something, and I thought, yeah, well, let me give it a shot, and then it worked out. But I don't feel I have a message I want to get out to the world or something like that. I do it to a certain extent because I think there's so much superstition, so much, I'm trying to find a nice word, but stuff that is imposed on people in the spiritual, religious, psychological, philosophical, political world about all this trying to get somewhere and what our techniques and methods are, and this is really possible.
Yeah.
You know, so what I'm basically saying, and which is also part of the motivation, except somebody, you know, insisted on me writing this, is that I say, no, you can look at it, you can think yourself.
Yeah.
You can actually think yourself. You don't need me, you don't need anybody else I might say around this do you resonate with? And then how you will express it will be you. It will be different. It won't be the same as me or anybody else. However familiar they might sound to me.
Yeah.
You know, so one guy that I kind of liked, and still sometimes, but it's actually a long time ago, but is U.G. Krishnamurti. I don't know if you know him.
Yeah, I do, yeah.
You know, so I like, he's very provocative and he's very direct and I think he's very clear, and also some of the stuff he says I totally disagree with.
Right.
You know, so I sometimes just for entertainment I listen to him and I can laugh, you know, or you know, but I'm not trying to get something from him.
No, okay.
You know, so and that you probably wouldn't be able to help, but I'm saying, don't chase understanding. You know, can you just see that no understanding is going to get you there? Then you can still sit there and you can still, because that's what life seems to. That's what seems to attract you in life.
Exactly.
Yeah, do that. And if you still want to meditate, or you still want to whatever you know, or somebody still want to meditate, I just say, you know, the body is not interested in it, and I would recommend you not doing it. But you probably won't be able to help doing it if you want to do it.
Yeah.
You know, so then I've done it extensively, as I said myself, for many years and for many hours and on retreats and so on. And when I look at it now, I'm like, what did I make this living organism go through? You know, because it's not interested. It's just living now.
Yeah.
You know, it's not interested in sitting down and trying to stop thought, or trying to ignore thought, or trying to observe thought, or trying to. It's all just thought playing around with itself.
Yeah.
It's me, a thought constructive entity, trying to let thought be. That's just more thought.
Yeah.
Whatever way you do it, however neutral you are, however effortless it might seem, you know, then you have learned that it should be effortless. So, I feel like now I'm just sitting down effortlessly, you know. So I sit quiet sometimes, you know, and I walk quiet or something like that. So it's not that I say, but you wouldn't effortlessly meditate. Meditate itself is something you've learned and acquired, you know. So I know I'm pretty radical with these things compared to most others, but that's what I see, you know. So that's why I say it, you know. And as I said, I don't ask anybody to buy it. I say, don't buy it. Find out for yourself. Because you don't need to lean on me or anything else. The only reason you think, I'm not saying you, but the only reason that somebody thinks they need to lean on anybody is because they've learned they need to lean on anybody.
Yeah.
Do you need me? And then you have all different kinds of things in the traditions that they show, you should go into celibate, which is in some traditions. And that's absolutely unnatural to the body. But that will bring the energy to rise or whatever you're having. And then you will get enlightenment eventually if you abstain from that. And you feel the sexual energy still. So you need to go to those people that can help you how to become celibate and how to actually achieve this. And that's a part of what I'm writing in and also talking is, I say, don't do that. The second, you know, you don't want to get rid of the sexual energy. What's wrong with the sexual impulse? You know, that's the most natural. It's unnatural not to have it. Life is not into it. You see, all life has a sexual impulse. If for some reason you have a malfunction, so, you know, from nature that you can't, well then, that's it. And you live anyway. We can live as a species anyway today, the way we've developed human beings. But it's not something you want to try to get to, you know, that. And the people, and I've met a few, you know, like gurus and so on, you know, that say they have achieved that. They're all lying. You know, the ones I've seen, they're all lying. And there might be one or two that have achieved it, but so what? I wouldn't recommend that to anybody.
No.
But you have these things that you need to achieve according to these traditions that talk about this state that you so desperately want. And then you go in, you know, so I went into a New Age cult for 10 years and I was a very obedient disciple. And I did everything, more or less, you know, and thought that was going to get me there. You know, so I became a sheep. And I was totally not an independent thinker in that. I tried to think a little within that framework as much as you could, but it was just all something I took on, and then tried to navigate a little in there, you know. But and I said, you need to stop believing that you need help.
Yeah.
You know, and that you can't do. You know, so that's part of the programming. You know, so you can't say, okay, I don't need help, I'm not going to go to him. Then that's more doing from the separate I that doesn't exist, and that perpetuates it. Yeah.
So there's nowhere to turn.
There's nowhere to turn. No, but you're smiling. You know, so it makes you happy actually to realize. And when you start seeing it, it kind of you can relax. You know?
Yeah,
in a good way, I think.
Yeah.
So you don't need to. I need to go there, and what should I do now? And like we also talked about a little before the interview, you know, you have this whole spiritual religious supermarket. You know, so once you've tried some time with one, you hear about a new one that talks around the same line. You go there and think they can help you because your one couldn't, because nobody can help you. I didn't know if I was being able to talk today, but it seems like you know, once I get into this, I normally you know get quite you know, because you know, like I said, I'm objecting to most of the stuff that is out there in terms of self-realization, whether it's within the spiritual, psychological, philosophical field, you know, that whole thing about realizing yourself or non-self. You can't do anything to realize your non-self either. If you believe that means the death of you, then all you do is continuing the belief that the you is needed to get to the non-you.
I think I'm a little curious actually as to this sense of separation is gone there, I understand.
Right.
So how do you experience the world? Does it feel different somehow to when there was a sense of separation?
Right. Yeah, so it's the belief in separation. So
Okay.
I can still use the concept of separation. That's what I'm doing now.
Yeah.
I say I and you, Caleb and Martin, and car and tree and so on. So I still use that whole way of expressing myself. But I no longer believe it's real.
Okay.
You know, so then you can say, but then how do you experience life? So say, I don't.
Right.
You know, because the experience is gone. The belief in the experience. So I can say, but what if you look at that, what do you experience? I say, that's a car. But there's no I to experience it. Okay. You know, but I know the concept, so I'm not that thing doesn't go anywhere.
No.
You know, I think I'm talking more now than I did before the belief in separation was there, you know, so I can still use all the concepts, all the words and so on, you know, but it doesn't mean anything, you know, so the whole conversation we've had here, it doesn't mean anything. You know, it's just because it doesn't mean more than the birds sitting out in the tree chipping at each other, you know, it just sounds, it's just, and so we put a lot of meaning into it, but it's just life. And we think we've become so clever in these days, the human beings, we've developed, we've evolved, we have a much bigger understanding. So I said, why are we then destroying the planet like this? Our own, you know, basis for survival. If we really think we've become clever and so on, we've become stupid, more and more stupid. We're destroying more and more. You know, and we don't want to, you know, so I don't say this is a solution, because as I said, as a species, I think it's very unlikely for it to happen. And I don't know what will happen if it happens. I think a lot of this system, because then your needs, you know, 90% of your needs falls away and life becomes very simple. There's nothing, you know, the only thing this living organism, which is not a separate organism, you said it's constantly moving, so atoms have moved into you and so on, you know, so it's constantly in interaction, in communion, in flow with the rest of life. You know, so, but the only thing that is really interested in is the basic survival needs. You know, so it's clothing, food, shelter. You know, so that aside from that, what else do you need? You know, then if somebody asks you to come somewhere, you say yes or no, but you don't really. There's nothing. You know, you don't need any entertainment, you don't need any more career, you don't need to save the world. You know, because the world can't be any different. you know, whatever I say, it's not gonna help it.
No.
You know, so if everybody became like that, you know, first of all, nobody's interested in it. So most people, when they seek liberation, they're not interested in not having any interest. They think they can get an enlightened way of living where they can still go and do all the things they do today. But you won't be interested in that.
No.
So it's it becomes extremely, you know, that's probably the biggest change in some way since I stopped believing, you know, the belief in separation stopped because I didn't stop believing in it. It just stopped, and then the belief in I just stopped.
Right.
You know, but that's been an extreme simplicity in terms of what this living organism needs.
Yeah.
And of course, this living organism doesn't define itself as separate. It's only the thinking ability that does that.
Right.
But that, you see, has no longer the power to define reality.
No.
So it doesn't define itself as, I don't know where I stop and you begin.
Right.
You know, so the whole I and you thing,
Right.
you know, I can use, as I said, you know, I still have that. I'm trained like you are, but it doesn't mean anything about what's real and alive right now to me.
No.
So you say, how do you experience reality? Was your question? I think is that I don't, because I don't no longer believe in the I'm using. I say I don't, but that I that I refer to is just a construct for us to be able to communicate. Yeah. And the way you know, so I won't start saying as I won't try to express myself without that I don't have any problems using that I. It becomes awkward.
Yes.
I won't. I have no wish to try to be different in the world or something like that. You know, I don't need to make an example of it. You know, I just say my life is much more simple. And what also happened was a relaxation in the body, which actually meant, which is written a bit about in my book also, but it meant a lot of pain because I've tensed up, and I think maybe my 10 years in the New Age cult, there was a lot of fear in that cult. It means they're even more tense than maybe what average man is. But all people are tensed up because we walk around, as I said, doing a lot of unnecessary things, having to uphold the idea of separation all the time. You know, so we're very and we don't feel the rest of the world. No. You know, so that started to relax, and that meant that I had a lot of tensions in the back and all different kind of stuff for years.
Okay.
You know, which was a letting go, and even I started burping when the initial. So I burped for like sometimes 5-8 hours a day. It was, and I was in Nepal when it started to happen. I went to all different kind of doctors and in tropical diseases in the main hospital in Denmark. Nobody could tell me what it was. And they said, "You all look healthy. There's no worms, there's nothing you've gotten." They couldn't say anything. But that was a kind of, I think it was a relaxation in the, what do you call it?
Digestive system.
Yeah. The whole, you know, so there were these kind of physical changes. And I think also another change that happens, which was that I started to feel the world more. So when I talk about feelings, I don't talk about feeling sad or mad or anything. So if you say how you're feeling now, you look agitated or you look mad or something, I say, yeah, I don't feel anything, you know. So I can laugh and you can say, now you look happy and now you look mad. I said, yeah, to you, but to me it's just life unfolding. And I don't have any preferences whether I shout at people or whether I'm cuddling them. Okay. Yeah. You know, that's whatever is expressed, and that's my programming. You know, so that's, you know, but what? So I'm not talking about those kind of feelings. Those kind of feelings don't really exist for me. No. You know, even though I can say right now I have a knot in the chest, that might be defined as fear. Right now I have a lightness in my body that would, before I would have defined that as joy or peace or whatever, you know. So I can, but it doesn't. I don't really register them unless somebody asks me, and then I can define it. But it doesn't mean anything to me because it's just life, and life is constantly changing. Yeah. So I might have one feeling 1 second, and then another feeling next second, and sometimes I might even have a feeling that is more or less persistent for days or weeks. Yeah. But whether it's what I would have defined a good feeling or a bad feeling that is there for weeks, to me there's no preference.
Right.
It's just what life presents.
Okay.
But what does happen, and I think there's a relationship to the spiritual traditions also, in terms of chakras.
Yeah.
So where the chakras is where the central glands in the body are placed, exactly the same places as where the spiritual traditions talked about chakras.
Yeah.
And I think my theory again is that these glands, have been hijacked by the thinking ability for its purpose.
Right.
Or the thinking ability has taken over their functions. So they've actually shut down. And you know that a lot of these glands are inactive, or some of them, the gland that sits where you say the heart chakra is, it shuts down around the teenage years.
Okay.
And that gland, once then you stop believing in separation, and the thinking ability becomes more of a servant and not the master anymore. That gland then is reactivated.
Right.
So it's a purely physical thing, and that gland is where you perceive the world, where you feel the world.
Okay.
So when you see, it's not something you do all the time, but sometimes when I focus on an animal or on a tree or something, I can actually feel it in here.
Okay.
And so you're much more in touch with life, and there are other things, but it's glands, it's not chakras, nothing spiritual, nothing mysterious, nothing. It's a purely physical thing that happens in the body.
Right.
Where these glands start to get, maybe they don't do fully, but I notice that I feel the world. I don't have this separation. I don't know what you call it. You have something that you're constantly locked into this separation idea.
Yeah.
So you don't really feel the world because you cushion yourself, you're away from it. And these abilities then stop because the thinking ability starts to carry out, it's interpreting what it called feelings, which is not really existing like the rest of this world view isn't existing.
No.
So then you start to feel the world, and then you don't become unconditionally loving, compassionate, peaceful, or whatever good towards the rest of the world. Yeah. But on the other hand, you would never harm it, because you feel that thing. So if you would harm it, you would literally feel harming yourself. Yeah. So you could say it's in a way you could say it's an egoic thing, because if I harm that, I harm myself. So I wouldn't harm it. Yeah. And there are other kind of things that, and I think that will vary from person to person. But I think that's one thing that you will start feeling more, but connected to life in a way. But it's not. There's no you to be connected. But life is here, and there at the same time. So you feel. So you would never be able to kill another animal unless you need it to survive, which we don't. No. So in our part of the world, I would, if I was whatever on a deserted island and I have to fish, I have to kill a chicken or something like that, I would have to do it, but only if it's really needed, and it's not needed in our part of the world anymore, and I wouldn't be able to do any harm on anything on purpose, because I would be harming. I would feel it in myself, so you start feeling, you start feeling the world, because the filter, the wall, whatever you would call it, of separation is no longer there, and then there's a life connection. Yeah. Which is again not an experience. It's just the way life is. Yeah.
Yeah. I can see. I'm attracted by that.
Right.
What you're saying. So then there's something in me that I want that feeling.
Yeah. You want that feeling. You want the feeling. But that's what the I wants. It wants the unity back because it somehow lost it. Yeah. But it didn't lose it. It's still it's there. Yeah. So even though, let's say, these physical changes haven't happened in you, and there's some tension that isn't here anymore. Yeah. But that doesn't mean, and that for me, for some people, now again, U.G. Krishnamurti, it seems like it happened very fast to him that some physical changes taking place. Yeah. And to me, it happened over at least 5 years.
Okay.
So the burping was in the beginning and so on, and that's all individual. I think how and also how it changes. Yeah. I think there will be some relaxation. There will be some more, whether you feel it in this gland here, or you feel that, there will be some more connection to the world.
I understand by hearing these stories of the so-called enlightenment or a shift, it just encourages somehow.
But you're already enlightened. It's only the belief, whether you're. That's what I meant. No matter how tense you are in the body because you have believed in separation for a long time, that doesn't make it real.
No, it's only a belief.
And for you, maybe, also what I've done, which I think made the whole process worse for me, was not only being in this fear-based New Age cult for 10 years, but I also did a lot of physical exercise, work out in the gym and so on, And I think, so you're already tensed up, the body is in an unnatural position, then you start lifting weights on top of that. So you just make it worse.
Right.
Whether you do yoga, even, the body is not interested in all this flexibility stuff. So you build that on top. So not only was I in New Age cult, I also did a lot of physical exercise. I ran marathons and I did stuff like that, which is absolutely crazy. I never run anymore. Why should I run unless a dog is chasing me?
Yeah.
Then I would run. But else you wouldn't run a marathon. Why would you run a marathon? It's crazy. So the guy originally, I think, he ran a marathon because he had to go and tell the Greek army some other army was coming. I don't remember the exact story. So then, okay, I have to tell my family that another army is coming or something. You would maybe run. And he died, I think, afterwards. I think he collapsed and died after this run, as far as I don't know. So then we do it today. For what? Why would we run a marathon? It's just, we need to do something. We always need to get in better shape, get better this, get more this, get that. It's always more. Even if you want to say, go back to nature, live very simple in life, then you want to get that.
Yeah.
And that's, you're never going to be content whether you get a more simple lifestyle, a more complicated, more sports, less sports. But I think that I did all this probably made this relaxation process more painful, I think. So I had a lot of pain and strain in the back and for years, and I went to the doctor because I didn't connect with this. It's just in the looking back,
right.
And now it's gone, and the doctor said, in the end I stopped. I had some swellings in my head also, so which I think is the brain starting to reorient. It's starting to be used in a different way. And I write in the book, and I actually thought about whether it's a little pretentious, but I wrote it anyway. I write in the book, you look at the Buddha's head, and he's got these kind of big things. So I'm not trying to compare what happened to me, because it's not enlightenment to me. It's just the idea of separation stuff. There's nothing more important in what happened to me than what the rest of the world. I'm not. It's just for some, maybe a genetical reason, this stopped. The belief in separation stopped. And I think that's maybe, it's just genetical programming that played itself out for some reason. It's definitely nothing I did. Right. All I did took me away from it.
Right.
So I got these swellings in the head, which I then say maybe that's why they pictured Buddha like that. But I'm not comparing myself to Buddha's enlightenment, because I would never do that. It's minor. But you can imagine that if the brain starts functioning according to other principles, there would be some shift that would have a physical impact on the brain. I don't know. But that happened, and in the end, there was a lot of physical, smaller, bigger things. And in the end, every time I went to a doctor, I said there's nothing wrong, and we don't know why it's like that. And then in the end, I just stopped. I stopped going, and it seems like I don't have any brain cancer. I don't have any serious illness, as far as I know. They said you look extremely healthy, and all the measurements and tests we did on you, there's nothing. And so there was a lot of weird physical process, which again, first of all, my genetical makeup, who I am physically, my history, so what I get from my parents, and what my history from this life, all makes it play itself out like that for me. For some people, it might be like nothing, or just a little relaxation somehow. But because they didn't maybe go into a New Age cult, and they didn't do a lot of crazy sports, and they didn't, so it might be And maybe in certain areas it might be something totally different for them. That's gonna be individual.
Yeah, I've heard Jim Newman talk about he had a lot of rashes on his body and he had to almost learn to walk again.
Right.
Because his hips suddenly relaxed so much that he...
Right. So that's how if we assume that we're talking about the same thing, then that was his physical reaction. But that's all you can really say, that maybe is a little different. It is that it's physically.
Yeah.
It's not... And then you can say a lot of, my existential problems, including my psychological problems, stopped.
Right.
Because there's no longer an entity to have those kind of problems.
Yeah. So worry about the future. So.
Yeah, and try to, what is the meaning? I have no idea. So I have no idea. So is there God? I have no idea. Yeah. I'm not saying there is one or there isn't one. I just don't know what's here.
Yeah.
So I don't have those, and unless somebody asks me about it, I don't think about it. No. I never think about it. No. So it might be that I've had a question from somebody and it suddenly pops up and I'm like, oh yeah, what does that mean or something? But it doesn't matter. It's because I know I will never know. No. And there might be a God, but I will never know. It doesn't make sense to me that there would be. No. But at least it's not the God we're talking about, if there is a God. In any tradition, it's not the God, because what would it be? Would it be a Hindu God, or a Christian God, or a Muslim God, or whose God is right? So all gods are man-made. Yeah. Where we say that God created man, so I say, no, it's the other way around. Man created God, and then said that God created man, but it's all man-made. And it's just concepts, again, imposed on us by religions, which has got an enormous power because they sold us the right goods. They said we can help you feel better, and everybody feels insecure because we started believing in separation. Yeah. And then they get all over the world. You see, they're getting taxpayers' money to create temples or churches or whatever it is. So they've become institutionalized, and they actually their function is not to help separation to stop, though some of them might say so. But it's actually perpetuating the culture of separation. Yeah. Their key function to do that, and the whole culture in Denmark and in other countries, but it builds on the Christian cultural values. Yeah. Even though none of us go to church anymore, is it 1 or 2% that goes on a regular to church in Denmark? But then it's still that moral ethics, values, beliefs in what we can achieve that then has been taken over by the psychologists, philosophers, personal development, maybe some New Age spirituality groups. It's all the same, just continuing in new versions, but it comes out of that, and it is basically that. It's just a further development, but it comes out of it. So the whole thing kind of have to collapse. That's what happened to me in 2017 when I realized what I've been chasing, it's not there. So and then it was a tiny thing. It wasn't a big revelation. I was out walking one night and it's not there. And then definitely I can't do any spiritual practice anymore, or study any of the people who say they know how to get there, because it's not there. It wasn't there. Is it there? It was absolutely clear that it's not there. It's just created by the thinking ability, and it's just concepts and ideas that has been imposed on me since my whole life. And what happened after that was that everything else also disappeared. So meaning, not that the world disappeared, but I couldn't believe in any of the concept of the world anymore. So the first was a goal, but actually what happened at the same time, which I saw the next days, was that the whole worldview of whatever it was, politics, philosophy, psychology, the whole separate worldview of things and so on, I was, it's just concepts, it's not there either. And then also at a certain time I realized that includes me, the concept of me. So the whole thing did collapse, but it took a little time before I realized the I don't say magnitude, but just how it was everything that collapsed at that, with that recognition, which seems like just a little thing that I didn't pay much attention to. I was even, did something happen? And I wasn't even sure afterwards. But then the next days I saw that, so I can't, any of the reality I perceived before, I can use it, as I said, but I can't believe in it anymore.
No.
And, so it all collapsed with that, including my own separate identity, the belief in me as a separate entity. I don't think you can do it, but honesty can happen. So what happened to me the like 3 or 4 weeks before, as we talked about also, was that I didn't become honest. It was just suddenly I couldn't stay dishonest to myself. So that's a kind of, if I should explain it by science or something, because I really don't want to go into any spiritual karmic things, because that stuff doesn't make any sense to me at all. So genetically that programming had played itself out in terms of pretending to myself that I really want this. So I said, at the same time, this New Age cult I was in, at a certain time, when that whole guru adoration programming stopped. I could never go back to that anymore after that. And at a certain time, this lying to myself, so I could tell you, be honest. And I can't help but sometimes, when people try to pretend to me, I really want this, and then, no, you don't. For me, you don't. So I would point out, as we've been talking about, if people want to listen to it sometime, or if they push me to do it, but it's not something I want to impose on you. I don't want to impose on anybody, realize that you've never been interested. Be honest to yourself. But if people come and say, but I am honest, I really want this, and I got unconditional love to myself and the whole world, that's rubbish to me. And then I would just respond, but it's not to try to get you somewhere. But that being said, before that honesty is there, before you're willing to see that it's all been pretense, whether that honesty comes after separation, your belief in separation stops, or before, it will come immediately after. It will come at the same time as it stops, I guess. But for me, it became clearer and clearer the weeks before. I still sort of believed in my own separate identity in those weeks, and there I still, even though I saw that and I stopped gradually practicing in those weeks, I was still like, what is enlightenment? So what is it? So that was kind of what was driving me to find out what, until that day where I suddenly, and I didn't actually think about that, I was just out walking, and I don't remember thinking of anything in particular. And then out of the blue, this kind of like, oh, it's not there. There's no enlightenment. There's never been, it's just all been something I've wanted, so I've been pursuing it, and I've been believing in it, because they say they have what I want, but it's never been there. So whether that, and then when you realize that, you can't uphold the idea of I really wanted it, because you see there's no I that exists, first of all, and the I can never want it. The I can never really want its own death, and I can never want the unknown. Yeah, it wants the unknown, but per definition, the unknown is the unknown. So the I, nobody can get it, So the I can say I want it, but what it really wants is all the beautiful things it's been told about, which it isn't. There's nothing to see, there's nothing to do, there's nowhere to get. But then you can relax, and that might feel like the opposite, like, oh my God, I feel trapped, and you can do one of two things with what I'm saying. You can either make it, believe what you already believe, or you can trash me. So it's not. So you can say, but I fully agree with you. Let's say you say that. So I said, no, but you don't. You agree with your own perception of what I'm saying, and it can't be any different. So I'm not blaming anybody. And I don't want anybody to think like me. I want you to think for yourself, and I want you to disagree, and I want you to come with a different expression that is you. Because life is not copying itself. It is not creating clones. Life is uniquely, so no two snowflakes are the same. So it's unique expressions. And that's part of what I also object to in terms of reality and spirituality and so on, because they try to fit you into a common framework, even if they say, oh, you need to be yourself within this, within certain traditions. They still fit you into a common, So I said, you don't need to go anywhere to be yourself. You are yourself now. And until that kind of dawns on you.
Well, thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you for joining here. It was fun.
Yeah.
We got into quite some topics here.
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah. Great.
Thank you.
Thank you. Great.